Hey guys, coming to you from the shop again for another one of these more informal reviews. SMSL reached out to me and they wanted to know if I wanted to take a look at their new A50 Pro. I previously reviewed the old A50, which was just a really small, cheap desktop size amp. There's nothing too much to note on that one. It did some things well, some things not so well. I believe that one did have a remote though, and it was pretty cheap, which that one kind of impressed me. But then we get into this A50 Pro, and it has a lot of changes since the first one. Some good, some questionable, but to some people, this is gonna be the perfect fit, and others, you might wanna pass on it. But let's get a little bit further into that and I'll explain it. I think there's one feature on this one that was intended to be used a certain way, but I'm gonna go about it a different way that I think could benefit a lot of people if you have the right hardware. But we'll get into that one in just a few minutes. Okay, so the video today, I took some notes on it. I've only been using this one for about a couple of days now, but I've pretty much got the hang of everything on here. There was a couple things that were pretty strange in some of the instructions that came with it. There honestly wasn't that much English in it, and it wasn't clear as to some of the settings that can kind of make or break this unit. But I'm gonna lay it out how I would best use something like this and who I think this one would be for. First, let's take a look at it though. We can see this frosted over display, things like that. That actually looks pretty nice. I kind of like that. It's a multi-function button, of course. We can go through a whole bunch of things that we'll get into in just a minute here. Inside of it, we have two Infineon chips. It's MA12070Ps. Not the typical chips that we run into all the time lately, but a lot of these SMSL products run these Infineon amp chips, and they're fine from my experience. And as far as wattage goes in this one, it's not gonna be something that blows the doors off, anything like that. I believe at 4 ohms, they were quoting around 70 watts. So 8 ohms, we're probably expecting around 30, 35 watts, something like that. But as far as usability on those watts, it was still pretty good. It was able to get the speakers really loud, and I didn't really have any limitations. And the way that this one's gonna be used, with some of its features, a lot of these are going to be soundbar replacements, and I think this is going to be plenty loud for something like that, as well as almost all musical cases too. Just don't expect to fill, huge rooms with this kind of thing, but small to medium-sized rooms, this one is going to be able to handle it as long as your speaker pairing isn't something crazy. But you guys totally understand that too. Taking a look at this a little bit further, we have the Bluetooth, we have USB, we have HDMI ARC, which that one's a big one for a lot of people. Optical, then line in. It's one of these here. So you're gonna need, generally you'll have an adapter or something like that. I have plenty of them laying around. I think they even come with some of the Weem products like the Mini. Then you'll notice we have 3 outputs here. And that's because they went with a subwoofer out, a powered sub out, as well as your typical outputs here. And this is where a lot of people start to question this one because they're like, well, who actually is using a passive subwoofer? And honestly, I don't think that many people are. So it's kind of interesting in that way. And that is 100 watts at 2 ohms coming out of there. But I'm going to show you guys how I would actually use this. You can still get some use out of these, actually a lot of use, and take advantage of some of the filters that this has built in. Beyond that, nothing really to show you guys here. Just a standard little unit. The power supply that comes with it is, let's see here, it is 24 volts and 6.75 amps. So a little different than some of the norm we see on these. I'm gonna pull you guys aside for just a brief moment here, but I've got some really interesting facts on cybersecurity. 85% of people posting puppy photos are actually trying to scam you. Human error accounts for 95% of breaches. 4 million files are stolen every single day. Cybercrime is quickly becoming more profitable than the illegal drug trade. Email is the primary entry point in 94% of malware attacks. And finally, cybersecurity training and consulting can reduce a business's risk of cyber attacks by 70%. And that's where today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, and their online cybersecurity program is going to get you the opportunity to learn about how to defend against cyber attacks and protect an organization's data. Just a few notes on the program. You'll learn to solve complex cybersecurity problems by applying systems thinking and adversarial thinking to your skill set. Gain a deep understanding of hacker tradecraft and how to respond to them in real time with adaptive incident response tactics. Apply security principles and practices to various components of a system and learn how to evaluate systems for risks and threats.
identify and define the computing requirements to solve problems, make informed judgments in computing practice based on legal and ethical principles. I work in IT, and I personally believe there isn't a better time to start a career in cybersecurity. Right now, the expected growth rate is 32% by 2032. So even if you're not interested, possibly your school years are behind you, pass the word to your kids or even your grandkids on a field that looks really promising in the future. Go to https://snhu.edu/Matt Kuykendall, also linked below in the description, to see if you qualify for the program today. You might be eligible for financial aid or even have previous credits that could fast track your degree. Click the link to get started. Now back to the video.
Let's take you guys through the menu here so you can get an idea on what this one all has. First, we have the volume here. Then we have, that's going to be your source. So we're just on Bluetooth right now. You can cycle through there, USB, ARC, optical, line, that kind of thing. And this is going to be your EQs. So there's 5 EQs, or I guess 6, including the 0. Myself, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I prefer the direct mode, just kind of with that EQ off at 0. That might be up to you and your pairings though. But what I would generally suggest is to leave that off and then actually do any fine tuning you need through the tone controls that are offered too, because you get bass and treble. So you can just go through there, really simple changes. And this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting, as well as confusing. So we have this low pass filter here, and there's no directions on it inside the manual. It just kind of gives you some vague answers there. So I had to do some looking, and what I was finding was, well, a lot of different stuff. I made some notes here as I went through this thing, like I said earlier, and so one of the things I found was it said 50 to 600 hertz through 10 points of adjustment. And so that seemed kind of confusing to me. And because you see here, we also have the high pass that is that same thing, 0 through 10. And they were saying that both of those were 50 to 600. That didn't seem very usable. And so I kept digging further, and I did find some different answers. And what I'm seeing now, and I think this is actually the accurate answer, would be, if we go here, let's get back to it. Whoops, sorry, I'm reading this upside down. So we're in the low pass here, and I believe what they have set here is through these 10 points of adjustment, you get 70 to 250. And then if you go to the high pass, you have 90 to 250. So that helps a little bit. It still could have used some adjustment here to make this a little bit more usable. You guys might be thinking, well, how usable is any of that going to be to me? There isn't even a usable sub out. And that's where I want to show you guys a little bit of a different configuration than what you might be thinking. And if you have something like this, it'll probably work out really well for you. So let me just bring you over there quick. So I have this thrown together quick to demonstrate how I would still use this. You can still get some use out of these sub outs. But it's not, in this case, going to be going to a passive sub, because I honestly don't even have a passive sub. I have loads of active subs, but you can still get some use out of it if you have a sub that has speaker level inputs. You can still use this as the signal, from the amp. So we can still take advantage of these filters. So let's go into the menu here to see how you might want to set something like this up. Go through here. So this is the low pass. So this is going to be, think about how high the sub is going to play in the frequency. So right now it's just wide open. And honestly, with the adjustments you get on this one, you're probably only going to be playing around, with these first 3 settings. Try to do a minimal amount. And in some cases, you're probably going to be better off just, controlling this from the actual crossover right here on your sub. But this does give you the option. You can do it from here if you'd like to. And then going beyond that, we'll get to the high pass. And this is where it's going to be more important. And this will get you the most out of this setup. This high pass, think about this is how much bass your speakers are going to be playing. Going beyond 1 to 3 is about all you guys are going to want to play with on this, in my opinion. I generally just went from 1 to 2, somewhere in that area. I then did most of my blending with the sub from the actual filter on the sub itself. But like I said, you can use that filter for the sub too, but try to just, you're gonna have to play with it to find a proper blend there, and it's gonna be kind of minimal amounts. And really, sometimes it's easier to leave that at 0, do it from the sub, it's quicker. One other adjustment point we get on this, and this one's kind of confusing too. So this is the sub volume. For some reason, it defaults to 599. I don't know why it's not 1 through 10, something like that, but you can only go down from there. Defaults at 599, and you can go down to 500. Kind of an interesting thing there. It works, and with the setup I have here, you can actually get quite a bit done with something like this. It just isn't how they necessarily intended it. And you may or may not have a sub, with these line level inputs. So it's not gonna work for everyone, but in this case, this is one option that you can do that some people may not have thought of when they just saw this product and see, this offers filters, things like that. But then you look and you see there's a powered sub out, and you're like, this isn't gonna work for me. It can if you have the right stuff. Enough rambling, let's bring you guys back over to the bench, go through the rest of this, wrap it up, and call it a day. Okay, so now that I have you guys back over here, show you what else you get with this. You get a remote, and it's a decent little remote here. We got volume, function, you can cycle through the EQs from here, mute, change inputs, power, things like that. You get a USB cable, go into your computer, anything like that. And then also an HDMI. And we'll quickly test the HDMI over to a TV too. I'm curious to see if we get any power on. I don't think we will. I don't think we'll get to CEC. I think this is just probably gonna be volume control, but we'll check that in a little bit. Okay, we have the A50 Pro plugged in over HDMI, and it's going into a LG OLED TV. I think it's a C2, C3, something like that. What we're gonna test now to see is if the TV will come on and it'll then trigger the amp to come on. I'm not expecting it to in this case, but let's take a look. Okay, the TV is powering on. Does the amp come on? No, the amp does not come on. So in this one, it doesn't have the CEC. I have a feeling it's just gonna be the volume control. So let's turn the amp on here. Okay, there we go. Now let's make sure the volume works. What's going on here? It's still not picking up the, maybe it's not into the, well, it is on the arc. It's not picking it up. Okay, we have liftoff. What I ended up doing was completely power cycling the TV. A lot of these TVs today just go into a standby mode so they can start up a lot quicker. There must have been some sort of handshake issue between the two because I powered it off, powered it back on, and now everything is working. You get volume control using the TV remote, which that's kind of what everyone was looking for here. You want to be able to control your volume with the TV remote, so it can be used a little more in that home theater setting or soundbar replacement. But like I said, no power off. We're going to power it off here. Nothing. So now we know it does work, and there are no issues with the HDMI after you get the initial handshake. I did try it a couple more times as well after this just to make sure everything was going, and I didn't have any issues with the connection over HDMI. So wrapping this one up, I'm gonna take a look at my notes. I wrote down some pros, cons, just some thoughts I had while I was doing this. Pros, it's silent. You could put the volume up all the way, and I wasn't getting any hiss from speakers, anything like that, which is really good because a lot of these do that. And some people it doesn't bother so much, but if you have them near field, that can be really annoying. The bass management is workable on this if you have the right equipment. And while I think I think it is actually a really good addition, and I hope more products continue to push it. They could use a little more fine tuning on that one, and they're not the only ones. I'm getting other products in too that are trying to move into this space. And it is a very good space to move into, and I'm looking forward to further iterations of this. And it does work on this one. And I was actually able to, I was able to make pretty good sound with this one when I blended that in with the sub and set the filters on the sub itself as well as this unit for the speakers. Because if you didn't know, cutting out the bass responsibilities from your speakers can make a huge impact in your sound quality. Speakers really are not that great at playing low. They may be able to do it, but in most cases you're just introducing more distortion if they're being, pushed to those low frequencies, and they're not really up to the task. It's better to just let a sub do it if you can. What else did I have down here? I have the remote down because some of these budget ones, actually a lot of these budget ones, don't include remotes. SML does pretty good on that, and they've actually updated their remotes over the last year or two to be a little bit better looking too. They're still the simple ones, but I kind of like these little ones. You get HDMI, which that's pretty cool, except, there's that one fault there that we do not get the power on, power off, things like that. But HDMI, so this does work as a good soundbar replacement, things like that. You could bring this into your TV and it'll do pretty well, anything like that. We also get a lot of inputs, the USB, HDMI, optical, line in. That's really good to see on this one. It's simple, it has good looks. I can't really complain about it in that way. It's just a little black box. I mean, I think the good thing is here, they didn't try too hard on it. It's just a simple screen, clean, black box, pretty sleek, things like that, which I can appreciate that. Sometimes just as much as the ones that try to push it a little too far and they end up looking a little bit ugly. And as far as the cons go on this one, I mean, I would still just wish they would drop the extra, sub out here, the powered sub. It's just not that widely used in the US. Not too many people have passive subs. These keep coming to me, so I think I'm gonna have to end up building a passive sub just so I can test more of these out. Beyond that, I wish there was less confusion on the menu for filters. They could really make that easier. Just give us frequencies, things like that, instead of increments and finding different answers in different places on the internet. I think I ended up finding the right answers there and how to best configure this. There is a chart too, and I'll probably post that up so you guys can take a look at that. But things could be made more clearly on these. And this display, I know it's simple, but they would still be able to put things like 50 hertz, 60 hertz, 70 hertz. People would have a lot less, struggles configuring this and blending everything together. Another thing I would look for on this one, because a lot of people are going to use this in home theater and the HDMI isn't capable of it, a trigger. A trigger would have been good here for various reasons. So you could power on, this could be powered on by other devices. Also, if that HDMI spec, if it just would have included CEC, that would have been just as good too, because we could have got the power on there. That's really all the cons I have. I don't have any major issues with this. I think it's decent for the price, coming in under $100. Has some unique features. That's kind of fun to get in, is because so many of these are the same. It could just use a little bit more fine tuning, but at the same time, this is kind of at the bottom of their lineup. So I get it. It's not gonna bust the doors down and give people everything because, well, they want you to buy up the chain too. So I get that. Well, guys, thanks for sticking around on another one of these informal reviews. I kind of like doing these for quick reviews on products like this. Not everything has to be a deep dive or a formal review with all kinds of crazy B-roll. Sometimes we just need to get right to the point, especially in some of these budget buys like this. I also have a ton of gear in, so I can't be spending a week on every single product I have in. So sometimes to get more videos out, I just need to, do some of these that are no script, off the cuff, make some notes and just roll with it. So I hope you guys can appreciate some of these just kind of honest reviews like this, where my general thoughts are just gonna come out and that's how it's gonna go. As far as how this one sounds though, since a lot of people are gonna ask that, I mean, it sounds pretty good for what it is. It's $90. I think it sounds clear, accurate, things like that. I would avoid too much of the EQs. Like I said, I would just leave that on 0, avoid the EQ altogether, and just make any adjustments you need with the tone controls. You can do the treble, you can do the bass right there. And then if you want to just play around with the filters, in my opinion, I would just take a little bit of the bass out of your mains, and then do most of the sub filtering just at the sub. It's cleaner, it's easier that way. I think it was a little easier to blend. But it can be powerful if you do want to cut out, the bass to your main speakers. If you get this one in, play with it, try those filters out, see how well you can blend it to your system. It's one of those things where it does take a little bit of adjusting. You guys will play around with it, you'll get the hang of it. You can kind of see what it's doing once you play with the filters a little bit. You'd almost have to get some measurements out if you really wanted to blend this well with what they have offered here as far as showing you, what's actually happening as you do it. But you guys will figure that out as well. Thanks for watching today. Please like, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. I truly appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to welcoming a lot more of you to the community. So I'll talk to you later. See ya.